You're listening to the Voice for Business podcast, episode 45. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you why I changed the name of my podcast. We're going to be talking about what this new podcast is all about, why I decided to pivot, and what it means to pivot. That's coming up next. Ready to learn what it means to have a voice for business? To utilize your voice to create the influence, impact, and income you desire. Join me, Katherine Beck, voice actor and voice coach, as I show you how to show up and stand out as the voice of your business. Learn my best tips on how to uncover your true voice, to speak with authority, and establish a personal connection to your audience that will leave them wanting to hear more. This is the Voice for Business podcast. Hello and welcome. Now, if you're just joining me here for the very first time, this is the first episode under the name Voice for Business Podcast, but this is not the first podcast episode here. So I decided after months of feeling like there was something not quite right, something wasn't fully aligned in my business, that I needed to make a change. And so over this past 6 or 7 months, I've been on a real road of discovery, of figuring what was holding me back, what was feeling heavy, and what I wanted to do to change that. What did I really want to do? And it took me a long time over these past 6 or 7 months to figure that out. It was a lot of roadblocks mentally holding me back, keeping me from taking risks, wanting me to stay safe in my comfort zone. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, right? I always think of this quote I heard once many years ago that said, "The greatest risk is not taking one." And I think when I was younger, I used to take a lot more risks. I was so determined and so stubborn to reach my goals, and I would not let anything get in the way. But through a series of events, sometimes things happen that either slow us down or hold us back from our dreams. And that's exactly what happened to me. And I can remember a very pivotal moment when I was 17 years old, and I received a comment that really shifted the trajectory of my future. Now, I believe that there's no regrets in life, and everything happens for a reason. Life is a series of lessons, and things happen in the time that they're supposed to happen. So for me, I knew that everything was happening for a reason, and everything has led me to this point of now making a pivot. A pivot? You might be saying, well, what's a pivot? Well, I don't know if we really fully understand what a pivot is until you actually go through a pivot. So for me, my pivot in my business is I was a voice and dialect coach, but more specifically, teaching American accents to actors who were born outside of the US. So it's very niche, very micro niche. And I love teaching the American accent to my actors. But here's the thing. I got to a point where I felt limited. I felt like there was more I wanted to share, and I wanted to share it with a bigger audience. But I couldn't necessarily feel like I could do that as the all-American accent coach, which is what I called myself. I really wanted to now start teaching a broader, bigger audience. And this is why. In my life, it's been a series of moments. And maybe you can relate to this. A series of moments that have gotten me to where I am today. I started out as a young entrepreneur at the age of 12, where I started my own business. My parents had a shop and they gave me a corner of the business, and I created something called Katherine's Corner. And I sold jewelry. So I would go to the shows and I would buy from my corner. And kids my age would come and shop there, and parents would come and shop there and get gifts. And it was a massive success. And I even started designing and selling my own jewelry and selling it in the corner as well. And it was a massive success. And I was hooked. I was definitely headed down that path of entrepreneurship. No question about it. But here's the funny thing. When you're 12 years old, you get tired of doing the same thing over and over again. Sometimes, you have other visions or other things that you want to do. And I was always a really sort of shy and quiet individual. But when I was in 6th grade, I remember we did a play in school. It was the very first play we did, and it was for The Wizard of Oz. And everyone auditioned. There were only a handful of lead roles, and it's very hard when you're in 6th grade to get a lead role, but I got a lead role. Now, don't laugh. My lead role was Toto. So I had no lines, and yes, I was dressed up like a dog, but I was considered a lead role, which was so cool. And I'll never forget that moment, the first time I stepped on stage in front of an audience and I could feel the warmth of the light hitting my skin, and I could sense the energy and the electricity of the audience watching. And from that moment on, I was hooked. I loved the idea of becoming a character. And in becoming a character, I felt so much more confident in expressing myself and expressing my true creativity. So that began my path and journey into really wanting to become an actor. And that was my dream goal. My dream was to go to Broadway, make it on stage, and then from there, go win an Academy Award. And I did everything possible to get myself on that right path. And I was on that path and I was doing all the things and I was getting there. But it was one comment when I was 17 years old. I went to a pre-college conservatory program. You had to audition for this camp where you would learn about acting. You would study like you were in the conservatory program, do your acting, your voice, your movement classes. And at the end, you'd be able to audition for the school, for university. And I didn't get accepted. Totally fine. But it was one comment that my acting teacher made. So all the teachers would write sort of like a report card of how you did in class and also how you did in your audition. And there was one section that said potential. And in there, she wrote something which said something to the fact that because of my height, which I'm 5 feet, so I'm on the shorter side, she said it may prove frustrating to having a career in acting. And the 17-year-old in me read that as, I don't have what it takes. I don't have what it takes to be an actor, to be successful, to make it on Broadway, to get that Academy Award. That's how I received it. But when I went back last week and actually reread it, because I've kept it all these years, I realized that that wasn't what she was saying. She wasn't saying I didn't have what it takes. She was saying it just might be a little bit harder for me. But I held on to that comment for almost 30 years. And the reason I bring that up, because it has greatly impacted me in my acting choices, in my life, and even in the decisions I make in my business today. Well, not today, since last week. I made the conscious effort to rip up that piece of paper, burn it, destroy it, get it out of my physical being because it no longer served me. Because I finally realized that that was a lie, that I do have what it takes and that I can do whatever I want to do, that fear is not going to hold me back, that judgment, that rejection is not going to hold me back. And from that moment on, I have felt like a totally new person. And this pivot or this idea of what I want to do now became so clear. I'm still a voice coach, still teaching voice, still teaching American accents, but I have this strong desire to teach voice to a much bigger audience, and especially in business. Now, when I talk about business, I'm talking about anyone who works in business. You can be an entrepreneur. You can be the CEO of your business. You can be an actor. You're still in business. You can be an influencer. There are so many different ways that you can be in business. And the reason why I changed the name of the podcast to Voice for Business Podcast is because I want to explore your voice for business. What is your voice when you show up as the voice of your business? So we're going to explore that in great detail here. On the podcast, I'm going to give you some amazing tips and insights and inspiration to really show up as your true self, your authentic self. Share your authentic voice with your audience. That doesn't mean it has to be 1,000 people, 1,000,000 followers. It could just be one person that's your audience. It also doesn't mean that that person has to be in person right next to you or in an actual audience. It could be online. So much of the work that we do in business these days is online. We are in a digital world, which makes the world so much smaller, which is so exciting because you can reach so many more people. But it all begins with your voice and how you connect to your audience. So we're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about that emotional, personal connection, how to create that human connection with your audience, how to build your audience, keep them engaged, and get them to take that next step. So whether it's converting them into a sale or buying your product, or let's say you're on a job interview and you get that job, or maybe you're an actor and you book that role, whatever it may be, whatever business you are in, it's about getting the outcome and the result you truly desire so we can have the dream life that we truly want to live. And that's what happened for me last week. I realized that my dream life was just a hope before last week, but now it's a reality. And I want the same for you. And it all starts with our voice. So, welcome to the Voice for Business podcast. I am so excited to go on this vocal journey with you and help you reach your goals. Stay tuned next week as we discover more ways on how to be the voice for your business. And if you're ready to start showing up as the voice of your business, I've got a free guide to get you started. You're going to learn how to utilize your voice to create impact, influence, and increase your income so you can get the results you want. Just head over to katherinebeck.com/voice to get your free copy. And coming up next week on the show, we're going to be talking about my 5-step process, the 5 essential ingredients to showing up and standing out as the voice for your business. Now, make sure to share the show with all of your friends. Let them know what's coming up next week and invite them to tune in with you and learn how to become the voice for your business so you can get the results you want in your professional and your personal life too. Now, go on, get out there and show up as the voice for your business. And I'll see you back here next time.